Yeah, well, in essence, he's the diplomat, and perhaps a little bit less of a natural MAGA warrior than J.D. Vance, for example. But the substance of what he had to say, the substance of U.S. policy toward Europe, was precisely the same. We also had the national security, new national security doctrine that came out recently, said the same. Talk about civilizational erasure in Europe. That the real issue is the kind of the culture war issue seen from Washington. That's the real problem with Europe. Less worried about external threats from Russia. And even if you look at what Rubio did, when he was in Munich, there was supposed to be a meeting with the Europeans and President Zelensky all together to talk about Ukraine. He didn't do that. He skipped that meeting.
Right.
When he gave his speech, he barely talked about Ukraine. And then when he moved on from Munich, where did he go? He went to see Viktor Orban in Hungary and to see Robert Fico in Slovakia, both
right.
Trump allies.
Right. Mark, I look at this in the heart of the matter for all of our listeners in America. I'm going to editorialize here, folks. We're hardwired to 4 years as the proper maximum length of a war. And it goes back to the Civil War, the Revolution. Mark, it's just part of the American heritage. 4 years is enough. Does Europe share that view of a 4-year anniversary of Ukraine? In Europe, is a 4-year war enough?
I don't think they see it the same way, and the reason is not so much because of a different idea about timing. We've already exceeded, the First World War. We've already exceeded Russia's participation in the Second World War. It's not that. It's much more that the Europeans don't believe that on the current terms being discussed, this war would end. They think that what we're really talking about, what the U.S. is pressing, is an enforced capitulation of the Ukrainians to Russian terms, and the Russian terms, are designed in order to destabilize Ukraine and to allow for Putin ultimately to achieve the goals that he had when he set out with the invasion. So it's really about thinking about whether you would end the war rather than whether we have a ceasefire now.
Mark, do Europeans, do they have a view as to American foreign policy? Is it a Trump-specific foreign policy, i.e. America first, or is it more of an American policy that things have fundamentally changed here in the U.S. from the post-World War II era?
It's a very good question, and I think that the important thing to focus on is the second, that they have finally really understood that the U.S. is moving in a different direction, that it's not focused on Europe anymore, and that is understood as an American change of policy. It didn't. They saw, many of the same kind of trends were there under President Biden. Even though, he kind of walked to Europe and said, sorry about Trump, America's back. It didn't quite play out that way. So, and the expectation is that the next president of the United States will also be more focused on other areas. So there is a fundamental understanding that Europe is going to have to change end its extreme dependency on the U.S. In terms of security. That said, Trump is a very extreme kind of expression of this, change in the U.S. And there is hope, I think, that first of all, that the midterm elections will take away some of the kind of revolutionary power that Trump exercises at the moment, and then secondly, that you might get a less, a more traditional U.S. president that comes afterward, whether Republican or Democratic.